Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hey, Look at My Thing. I am your host, Aaron Irons, and I'm joined today by the lovely Rachel Bennett and Keeghan Reynolds. Today, we're going to talk about The Legend of Korra. And I'm going to turn it over to my co hosts and ask, what do you guys know about The Legend of Korra?
It's the logical follow-up to Last Airbender, right? The good animated series. I know that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's I think it's a different time period, like many years either after or before.
Both true.
Oh no!
Oh, goody.
So, just to clarify a little bit, the point of the Avatar series is that there's kind of this chosen one trope, and that at any given time there is one chosen person who is the Avatar. And that person, when they die, they transfer to the next person who becomes the Avatar. So again, think like Slayer in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Indeed, one girl in all the world. There's our Buffy reference for this week. Done.
Every single time. We'll always go back to Buffy. It's what we know. It's how we...
All three of us know it. That's the secret.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a chosen one trope. There are people in this world that can bend elements, air, earth, fire, and water, and it rotates between which native person is the Avatar and can bend all four elements at any given time. That's kind of the basis of world building, and so you're right. This would be after the last series that the Airbender in that one, who is the Avatar, he dies eventually. I mean, time passes.
Spoilers, fuck, come on.
Natural course of things. His life ends at some point. I'm not going to tell you how or why, whatever, But then a new Bender is chosen as the Avatar. It's not really known how this happens necessarily, except that, it just transfers when they die to the next person.
Spooky mystical shit.
Yeah, there's a natural order to it. It goes, I think it is air goes to water, water goes to earth, earth goes to fire. So, and it's always in a rotation like that.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you guys know about this, or?
I mean, here's what I'm hoping for. I am hoping very much for a very snappy cutscene introduction. I know that I watched some of the original Avatar and then sort of missed Legend of Korra due to the time period when it came out. I didn't have cable at that time, and it just wasn't going to be feasible for me to watch it. I don't know if that was late high school for me or early college years. I really can't remember.
So this came out 2012.
Perfect.
Yeah, so just kind of linking you between the two worlds. The Last Airbender is very kid friendly and very aimed at a child audience, and you can tell that. But it still has a lot of adult themes in terms of they'll deal with death. They just deal with it in a way that is approachable to kids. And Legend of Korra takes itself a little more seriously, and I remember very distinctly in the Airbender, the last Airbender series, if somebody died, they just kind of panned the camera away and said well, he's gone and is probably never coming back. And they really dealt with it very almost lightly. And in this one, I'm pretty sure there are characters that die and they say yeah, he's dead and we're not gonna beat around the bush, which is kind of surprising because they're on the same network. And I just wonder if it's a time difference between what Nickelodeon was wanting to show people.
I think it also is probably intended audience, right? Because the first Avatar came out when I was a kid, I was young, and the right age to be watching that show. And then this Legend of Korra, it would have been my sophomore year of college, I think, or end of my freshman year of college. I was definitely old enough at that point where I could deal with facing that sort of thing head on. And if you're looking at, okay, well, the kids who watched this originally are in their teens or their early 20s, a lot of those kids are going to have to start dealing with grandparents or uncles and aunts or that kind of thing, dying. So it kind of makes sense that with the audience, they'd be a little bit more sort of like comfortable with
No,
talking
that
about
makes
things
sense.
more directly.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble because I only watched like the first season of the Airbender show, the original one, and I remember it being pretty light. Like,
Hmm.
you know, like obviously there was like a backdrop of like war and like bad stuff was happening, but there was a lot of comic relief between all those things to keep it like, oh, you know, these are and like most of the characters were fairly young. Like, are the characters older in this?
Yeah, so they're all like early 20s instead of being
Okay.
like 11-year-olds. So yeah,
Okay,
it's
well, that's a big
definitely
difference.
yeah, and that's kind of weird because they like to bring in a lot of the older characters. So it just tells you like if this avatar is about 20 and you know the last avatar died, he must have died kind of young so that all of his
Mm,
friends are still around. I think they kind of it stretches my willing suspension of disbelief that so many are still around, but
okay.
they're all really old.
I assume they use the same voice actors then for those people to kind of like tie that in.
Surprisingly, they do use a similar voice actor for one of the sons of him, but they don't use the same for the actual characters because they wanted to be like they've aged so much they don't
Okay,
even really sound the same.
interesting.
Um, yeah,
That makes sense. Yeah.
um, I think it's probably I think we should probably jump into it pretty soon, but I'll just give you just the quick, like, in case you don't know, sort of things. It's about Korra. It takes place in a city called Republic City, and it has kind of a 20s vibe. There's a little bit of steampunk elements to it, but technology has definitely increased since the last set. It was kind of almost feudal Japan, kind of, with the first one, with a few elements of like steam power, but now they have like cars and things. Um, I think that's probably enough to just jump in. I don't think you'll really be missing anything. And anyway, we're trying to explore this. So, um, yeah, I think we should just go ahead and jump in and watch it, and then we'll get to our reaction. So,
Hell yeah.
stay
Sounds
tuned.
good.
This week's episode of Hey, Look at My Thing is brought to you by. No, I'm totally playing with you. We don't have any sponsors. This is the first week. But if you have like underwear or a mattress or whatever, this is where it would go.
And we're back. We just watched the first episode of Legend of Korra. Keegan, what were some of the things that really stuck with you from this episode?
Um, like yeah, when you mentioned it was like 20s, it's like 20s New York, pretty like solidly. They definitely had that aesthetic going in right away. Um, Um, there was a kind of stereotypical hero wants to be a hero maybe before they're ready to be. Um, I did have some questions, but overall I really enjoyed it. I guess like when I think about in my mind comparing it to like the Avatar that I remember, I only watched one season. It was a long time ago. Um, this seemed more I don't know. She feels more isolated than than Aang did. But maybe at the beginning of Avatar, he was really isolated too. Um, it was just they didn't really introduce like any friends of hers, like her age. Where I think, like at least I think in the first episode, he met the two water bender people in the last one. So it seems more, I don't know, like maybe more of her journey than an ensemble for right now. But I guess that could change easily as the upcoming episodes go on.
Yeah, they did a lot. I think what this first episode does is it tries to do a lot of linking you between the two worlds,
Hmm.
and there's just so much to do in that amount of time that they don't have a chance to introduce all the characters.
Yeah, a lot of
They're
world building.
yeah. Um, I what I like about it is that it does a lot of exposition without imposition in this first episode. They've got so much to catch you up on, and it's not like, of course they're going to do the, oh hey, did you hear about the White Lotus? Yeah, the White Lotus are this, or they aren't going to tell you everything, but they're trying to get you like at least a general feel, and they're trying to do it naturally. And I think what a lot of shows fail at is making it feel natural and not just we have to get these two characters to talk about this, let's have one of them ask it stupidly and have the other one answer in a like essay format.
In 300 words or less, please explain the socio-political impact of having the Avatar live in your town.
Yeah. So they did introduce a couple characters I want to touch on. Tenzin is the son of Aang, who is the last Avatar. So he is one of the few airbenders in the world. He's going to play a big role throughout this series. But it's kind of interesting that they have like the son of Aang, who we all know as an 11-year-old, is actually the mentor of the Avatar in this show. So it's definitely, it shows kind of this, like, we didn't even get to see him as a kid, but he's a serious, like, I've got to be the adult in this situation when it calls for it, and we never get to see the childish side of him. And on that note, we also have Katara, who is Aang's wife. She's a big character in the Airbender series. It's just definitely nice to have that link right away, that from almost the first moment you see Katara's face, you recognize her hair because it's very iconic. And she doesn't play as big of a role in the series, but definitely is kind of that link between young and old, passing the baton. They're really trying to get that narrative across. Rachel, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that struck you from this?
So I just want to go over a little bit, like kind of what we saw. Like the beginning stood out to me. One of the things that I said that I was looking for, because it's such like a strong memory for me from the original series, was like a dope ass title sequence, right? And we definitely like got that cool title sequence where it's like the elements and people are like bending in front of it, and it's very like, yeah, that's cool. I was glad to see that. As we like progressed forward, we met baby Korra, who was an ass, which I really like. I work with kids. I love kids, but small children terrify me. And I like to see her as like this hyper destructive asshole. Like the first thing we see her do is blow up a wall in her family's house. And honestly, like that serves as really good foreshadowing. Sort of the thing that they were trying to get across. The real thing that this episode did is, like you said, it bridged the connection. It bridged that gap between the first series and the second series. But the bigger thing is it set her up as somebody who is good, but also not in control and not thoughtful about the things that she's doing. And it did a really good job of setting up, not only is she not thoughtful about the things that she's doing, but outside of her compound in the real world, that has real legitimate consequences, which I think is not something that there is enough of in kids' shows. Like Korra's intent in the scene where she's like taking on the thugs, right? So it like progresses through, she wanders through the city, she meets a homeless guy, she sees a lot of sort of like examples of the political climate being not super great, and then there's some like thugs in the street shaking down this little shop vendor, and she goes full Batman, and I got briefly hyped that this was just going to be her like doling out vigilante justice for a couple of seasons, and I was really horny for that, and it's okay that it didn't happen, but that's fine. So like after she doles this out, the police come and they pick up the criminals and then they try and arrest her, right? And one of the things we see a lot in kids shows is like, oh, well, as long as your intent is good, the consequences don't matter as much, right? And we see that all the time in like the Marvel movies, like how much fucking property damage and destruction do they wreak? And that just like does not come up. They just like don't talk about it. Oh yeah, you destroyed, all of Manhattan, but it's fine. It's fine. No, like people are going to be pissed about that. There's consequences to your actions, and when you're careless, when you have power, there's consequences to that, and people get hurt. Like that's people's livelihood. And I appreciate the fact that she got picked up by the police and she was like going to get charged because her intent didn't matter, right? It's the consequences of the actual action she took, regardless of intent. And I think that's like such a good message to have, especially given sort of the audience, which I think is in that like middle school to upper teen maybe range is probably like the core intended audience. I'm sure it had a big audience of like 25 to 30-year-olds too.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of like late middle school, early high school is probably like the core intended audience. And that's a great message for them to have. Like that's something that's a strong one.
It's
Yeah.
interesting to see because like in the original when they were like children, they were children,
Mm-hmm.
you could kind of understand them not understanding how complex things were, how there's, more than just, oh, if you see a thing, it's because of a thing. It's like there's layers of stuff. She's
Mm-hmm.
older, and so when people view her in the city, they expect a certain amount of uh experience, a certain amount of maturity, and she's so naive that
Mm-hmm.
it's like off-putting. Um, it makes me feel like the earlier scenes where they were like testing her. It makes me think of a lot of different books I've read where it's like the children of royalty that they're grooming to be like the next king, the next whatever, and you can tell if they continue on this particular path, where they have skills that could be destructive, but not the wisdom and knowledge to use them responsibly. It could go really badly for whatever place that they're supposed to be the leader of.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. My one of my notes, because again I took notes, is it just a line that says, "Man, Cora's definitely a teenager, huh?" Like, it's not it's not a bad thing. Again, like this is an age group that I spend almost every day with. Like, I'm totally into that, but like they show it in a way where it's like, it is clear that there is like both that disconnect and also like they start right away with like, hey, here's some big political themes about class divide. I'm going to show you this
Yeah.
a couple of times. Here's a guy who found a really nice bush to live in the park, but he's getting arrested because we can't fish in this park. Like, we don't know how else he's supposed to get food, but he's going to get arrested for this. Here's some people standing on their soapbox in the square talking about how benders are like a problem for them because they're creating this class divide and they use their powers in ways that are irresponsible. Like, right away, we're getting some of those like big themes that, again, are something that like teens really grapple with, that sort of like externalizing and figuring out political systems and how the world is supposed to work or how they think it's supposed to work and then how it actually works. And so it's cool to see that like they built that up so quickly and right away, and I love that as like a way that people are moving. I'm very into that as like a backdrop for a story. Like, political friction and factions is something that totally does it for me, so I was very into seeing that.
Yeah, it seems like a lot is gonna do more with her as a figurehead and a political figure. Um, like obviously it's an animated series for slightly younger, so there's gonna be fights and there's gonna be action, but it does seem like um, what she presents to the world, how she presents herself, and how she can kind of use her status, like as the avatar, to affect change, will be more important than, oh, I'm going to be able to beat up a bad guy.
Let's learn to make friends. Like, maybe not as much the theme or like the overarching theme. I'm sure it'll happen, right? Like, it's part of sort of the vibe, but I don't know
So,
that it's quite as much of the big thing.
Aaron, when did you watch this?
I think I started it maybe roughly a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago.
And you burned
Um,
through like the whole thing?
yeah, there's 4 seasons. I think there's like 12 to 14 episodes a piece. So whatever the math is for that, that's fast for
Like
me.
50?
Like 50 episodes of sitting still watching a show is a lot for me.
Mm-hmm.
I I was introduced to it by a friend because I was lamenting like The Last Airbender was done, as I had watched that within the last 2 years as well. So this is like
Mm.
really quickly together. I'm watching all of this. I watched all of that like within the last 2 years, and then I was lamenting, hey, Last Airbender's done. I just wish there was more. And he's like, have you heard of the Legend of Korra? And I'm like, what is this? So I totally dove headfirst into it because I didn't even know it existed, and I was just super pleased to like know that there's so much more content of this world that I fell in love with.
Right.
Yeah, like I could tell what you're talking about earlier when you said because like when you said Fuel Japan, it's like, oh yeah, it was basically Fuel Japan before, and then it became like 20s New York, and it is a kind of jarring uh change in just tone. Obviously, it seems like it'll be more, I don't know, self-contained. Obviously, the city is sprawling and big, but I mean, I remember from just the bits I remember from Avatar, they go like all over the world. Um, do does travel happen in this, or does it take place for the most part in the city?
So season one's definitely pretty contained to Republic City, and it definitely follows the themes that Rachel picked up on, and that they were really trying to. They did a good job of giving you some foreshadowing of what's going to happen. You know that she's going to be training to get her airbending so that she'll be a full-fledged avatar. So you know that's coming up. There's the Amon movement with the anti-benders. That's kind of the antagonist, but it's definitely focused on the city and her connections in the city and her wanting to be a part of the city and to protect it. There's a little bit of Batman kind of feel to it. You're right. Um,
Yes.
there's definitely feel is a feel that is in the first season, and then beyond that though the second season moves far away, like very
Mm.
far away, and the third and fourth season of kind of, again, it's more worldly, but they always come back to Republic City as kind of their home or their place to defend, but things just get bigger and bigger and bigger with every
Hmm.
season. um it Yeah, I think that's kind of the summation of it. If you're really wanting to see the Republic City stuff, you'll get your fill of it in the first season, and then it kind of moves on and it has more of like what else is going on in the world.
Right.
It kind of like there was a moment when she was watching the Aang's son like fly away with his family, and she kind of got a look on her face where for a second I knew she wasn't gonna this wasn't gonna be the show just because of the tone of everything, but it made me like think of a show where an avatar is just kind of angry. You know, she's not really angry. She's like frustrated and she's like, wants to see the world, but like actually angry, like um and just to see what like an angry person with those kind of powers, kind of an anti-hero in this world, what would that be like?
Um there's so I think that could work. And you're kind of onto something because she's definitely an angsty character,
Mm,
more so than Aang. Like Aang is just like that nothing gets me down, and when something gets him down, it was like serious.
hmm.
So they're kind of polar opposites where anything that happens to Korra, she's just struggles with it a lot quicker. And then she needs her friends to help pick her up her mood more so than just her ability. Um,
Well, I think that sort of comes back to like at the beginning, right? When we were talking about that, like, I don't know, the thing that stood out to me again and again is intent. Like they said, oh, Aang set up, he said that we were supposed to, keep you safe. And Tenzin was saying, like, this is what Aang wanted for this city. Like, I need to be here to make sure that his vision is realized. Like, this is again, it's not just Korra's intent that sort of like comes back on her. It's also all of those sort of intentions that Aang had and how those have unintended consequences on Korra, who hasn't even met him. Like she doesn't know him. But like all of these things that he set down as dictates are still affecting her and realistically making things worse for her than he had it, right? Like he was able to travel and he was able to sort of figure things out, and there wasn't anybody sort of like lording over him and treating him in this like really precious way. He was in danger a lot, and so he like figured out how to deal with being in danger, which was part of the job that he was going to have going forward. And she hasn't really had that opportunity. Like any
Yeah,
danger she's faced has been extremely artificial and like a training ground.
yeah, I don't think she has a really good idea of the scale of things. She's never really been, like you said, in danger in a serious situation. Like she's been very isolated and protected. I don't think she quite understands what real people's lives are like.
I agree. I think what I like about the show and that aspect is that they really develop a strong female character early on and really kind of thrust her forward.
Mhm.
Um, it's kind of a tricky tightrope to walk because there's always going to be pushback to that kind of a character. There's always going to be criticism to that kind of a character. You can have Hercules and he can be this masculine, manly, do whatever I want, I can't do any wrong, and everybody just like soaks that up. It doesn't matter what your background is, it's just accepted, that's okay. But when you put a female in that position, there are people who are like, oh, thank God, finally. And there are other people who are like, that's unrealistic, I can't imagine that she could beat up people, like I don't believe this. And you get really this like stark divide, and for what reason? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we know the reason. Spoilers. but
Yeah.
it's true. Like, was there that kind of like critical response to it when it not critical response? Like, I assume critically people were like, oh yeah, obviously, because when you're like putting things down on paper as a critic, you have to think about the way that you respond to things. But like, was there a lot of, I don't know, nerd response to it when it came out? Do you know?
Yes. I don't want to spoil the ending, but
Mm.
the last episode, like I saw there's something that happens in the very last episode that like had my jaw drop, like, and it felt very good to me, and like I was like super happy about it. I got on the forums to like kind of reinforce my opinion, or did I actually see what I saw, or did I interpret this right? Like, how does
Hmm.
everybody else feel? And I just saw so much negativity to it, and it
Wow.
shocked me. And it definitely reflects to Korra specifically. But
I think I
it,
remember this. I think I remember like hearing about it when it came out, if I'm remembering correctly. And I remember like there was obviously a large segment of the community that I follow online who was really like happy about it and was like um felt like it was like I don't know how to put this, like a logical step forward in entertainment and in programming, but there was a lot of pushback in other ways.
yeah, I think if we're gonna just dance around the topic, we need to like say it because we're like leaving
Yeah,
Rachel in the
yeah.
Can we
dark.
just like no? So like I also know. Here's the thing. I also have a pretty good idea, but this is like obscure and arcane. So here's just like a blanket spoiler warning. If you were alive, cognizant, and on the internet at the time when the finale of this show happened, you almost certainly caught a little bit of the like media reaction to this. It was huge and extremely varied. But if you are planning on watching Legend of Korra, which Aaron absolutely recommends that you do, you should just like skip forward a little bit, because we're about to talk about the end of it, and don't do that to yourself. That fucking sucks. So anyway, now we can talk about the end of it. Spoiler warning given. Official warning.
All right,
Oh,
Aaron,
here
hit
we
us with
go.
it.
Okay, so there is a love triangle between Korra and two of her friends she makes. There's Mako and it's not Bolin. No, sorry, it's between Asami, Mako, and Korra. And Mako is kind of the center of it as the only male character, but there's kind of a thing between Korra and Mako, and then later there's a thing between Asami and Mako, and it goes back and forth many times throughout the show. And how the show ends up is that Korra and Asami are sitting on the step and they say, you know what? I want to go off on a journey with somebody and I can't think of anybody else I'd rather do this with. And it's got very like they just kind of go off and do their thing. I think they're holding hands even, and they go off together. And it's Asami and Korra, who are both female characters. So it's
Mhm.
heavy intent that there is a lesbian relationship. But because it's a Nickelodeon show, that's about as far as they go with
Hmm.
it. And so
Right.
there is on one side there's they're just friends, and I kind of interpreted it as let's swear off dating people at the moment and just go as friends, which is not the popular way of looking at it.
Uh-huh.
Um, and when I looked at it through the lens of like a lesbian relationship, I thought, oh, that's actually better. I like
Yeah.
that. And that relationship was actually frowned upon more so than like received positively. Um, I think if people had looked at it through the lens I had looked at, it would have been less negative reception. But the I guess the problem I have with it being a lesbian relationship is there's almost no build up to the point that like they should be together. It's almost like dropped on you at the very end. And I don't see like it's just bits and pieces a little bit that they have like some affection for one another, but it's all because it's a kids show, it's too watered
Mm.
down.
Are
Right.
they
And I don't think
are
it's
they good friends throughout the series? Are they close friends? I mean, are they like very close friends?
Yeah, they do actually develop a pretty good relationship. They obviously have some rivalry because Mako is between them in the love
Mm.
triangle. Um, so I don't know. I kind of go back and forth because one side of me is like, God, I just wish there were more lesbian relationships and things. And I don't care if people
Right.
think you're shoving it down your throat. Just let it be
Hmm.
visible. But
Yeah.
on the other side of it, like I also think it's very important to just not be in a relationship and to just spend time with friends and have that be a center of your life for some amount of time before like in between. And
Right.
I can kind of see both sides and I've experienced both sides, and frankly like either interpretation to me just feels
Hmm.
positive, and it saddens me that so many people reacted negatively toward it.
So do you think like so I haven't seen the scene obviously because I'm not going to like ruin that for myself. But like you said that you initially viewed it as just like oh like these people have decided to that they have the strongest friendship and like they're going to go off on this journey. Do you think that it was received by a lot of people as being a sign of a lesbian relationship because they were either like looking for something to be angry at or desperate to see that kind of representation? Like is that why that line happened, or is it like is it more obvious than I'm making it out to be in my head?
I I think that some creator came out. Now this is speculation, and I'm not Google checking this. So if we have to go back in and or you come back and say like, "Oh, Aaron was totally wrong," I think a creative director came out and said that yes, they intended it to be a lesbian relationship after the fact, but it's very
Vague.
gray area. Yeah, it's eh,
Right.
so I yeah, I think that
It might have been what they could get away with considering their position, the network, and the pressures that way. Um, I mean, I don't know. Was there a lot of obviously? I assume sexuality wasn't brought up a whole lot in the series.
well, there's definitely male female kissing and male female affection. Nothing, they have to draw it at a line that they can show
Yeah.
on Nickelodeon. So, like, there's not a lot of depth that they're going into there, but clearly showing that they're in a relationship, that they care, feelings get hurt, blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. And then this last one, it does show them, I think, holding hands and walking off and going on a journey together. So there's definitely that amount of affection. Um, and I guess, looking back, I could easily see that it being interpreting as a relationship, but I also, and this is maybe my weird jaded perspective, I could see myself going off with any one of my friends holding hands and just being like, screw people and being in relationships. I just want to be with my best friend right now and go on a year-long trip.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
absolutely. Like I have 100% platonically held hands with like a shitload of people. It's just like a nice way to be in contact with someone. It doesn't have to be weird about. Like, I don't know. I can see that. I can definitely see and don't think there's a problem with saying like, well, I want this to be like a relationship they're having, either because I think it makes sense for the characters or because I think that it soothes a place in my heart that is wounded from never seeing something that is me represented in media and characters that are powerful and I care about. I'm totally about that, but I could definitely see it being something that's like more, I don't know, just like platonic. Like it is important to have friends, and also that's a good message for teenagers too.
Yeah.
It's like it's okay to just have friends and not be dating someone. Oh my God, let it
Not
go.
everything has to be
Yeah.
the lead up to something.
Mm-hmm. I think that kind of wraps up the things that I really most wanted to talk about this show.
Can I drop one other thing in real quick?
Sure.
It's totally unrelated to just completely fucking anything. But I cannot get over, and this was true in the original show, but I think I either noticed it more here or maybe it's more true here. I cannot get over how fucking beautiful their like set design in the animation is. It's got this like rough oil painterly quality to it that is really, really lovely, and sets like a very, very clear kind of tone for it. And I remember watching the initial show, it stood out to me because the actual like animation of the characters is so like flat and different. They do a really nice job with action, but the actual like coloring of them tends to be very flat, and then they have these backgrounds with so much depth. But like watching through this one, I don't know, I think I've changed because it made them like stand out. Like all the things that were happening on screen stood out so much against this like very beautiful kind of subtle background that had a lot of like detail and interest in it without being showy and brightly colored and weirdly proportioned in a way that like a lot of kids shows are.
Yeah, that's definitely an improvement from the first Airbender series in that I think they just have more budget or more technology, something that makes it easier to do something with
Right.
a TV show. Like TV shows are always the last to get like the best of the best.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot cooler stuff in movies first, and I think it's just the difference of the time. Like Airbender was made 10 years ish or so before this, so we just saw a lot of improvements.
Yeah. I wanted to have like Rachel's art nerd corner and just like draw attention to the fact that like just the backgrounds themselves are like a thing of stunning beauty and definitely worth watching at least an episode for that.
Definitely.
If you have no heart and don't care about anything else.
Piggybacking off of that, the music is just
Oh my
music
God,
was
yes.
really good.
amazing. Oh my God. Like this kind of came into my life at a point where I was like very emotional. And so the music and the themes and just every episode of the Airbender and most episodes of Legend of Korra have brought me to tears, at least a little bit.
Oh.
And it's definitely the music that like sends that signal of like, oh, gonna cry again.
Oh, good.
So yeah. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Not for me. I think that's me.
Perfect. Well, next week we are going to have Rachel sharing her thing. Rachel, do you want to give us a quick sneak peek of what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, so I am hoping I'm going to introduce you to a show that you will both hate based on things that you've said, but that I think is basically, it's like the peak of sort of like what TV shows can be at their absolute best. And it's a little show called The Wire, which I
Ooh.
cannot believe you haven't seen.
I mean, I know of it, but I have not seen anything from it.
Bizarre to me. Anyway, we'll get there. Do you have a scale for us, Aaron, to rate Legend of Korra on?
Just how about you give me an element that most resonates with you and just kind of explain that.
I think I would rate this 7 8 waterbenders out of 10 for right now. I'd have to see more to go higher than that.
Okay.
I think that I would consider this show to be I think I would consider this show to be an airbender. The sort of like vibe of it is very kind of like a little bit flighty and a little bit frenetic, but it definitely feels like things have a lot of momentum and they're really headed somewhere. So I think I'd call this an airbender show for sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will catch you all on our next episode, and thanks for joining us.